Hello, my friends. Back on after a week off. Been a busy couple of weeks. Doing a million things, doing writing sessions and mix deliveries and productions and all over the world. Got UK stuff and LA stuff and German stuff and Australian stuff. A lot going on. But very happy to be back on with Jon. Gonna grab him right away.
Hey! Back with the OG background.
I think although it's funny because this one you're like much closer to the camera, and then the other one you have the like backlit halo. It's glorious. How you doing, man?
It's glorious. Good. You look good. You look like 10 years younger.
When I shave and I get good lighting,
beard.
I look very youthful.
Yeah, you look.
Yeah. Very sometimes I gotta bust it out and let them know that I'm. Thank you, man.
Nice.
This is like. I'm
like, I also have. Wow, you're glowing.
Light and whatever, but I will take the compliment.
Okay, I don't have any fancy light. You can't even see my face. I have very minimal face.
Yeah, your face seems to be like disappearing as your hair and beard get longer.
Yeah, I'm trying to get a haircut after this, to be honest, because it's a little insane.
Just like be full, like Jason Statham or something. Just some like.
Should we do a whole episode where we just talk about our faces?
Compliment each other and show what friendship is really about.
I miss this so when we don't do it for 1 week. It's been a week off or 2 weeks off. I know.
just 1 week off.
We're busy. I like this too much. I even talked to you, I think off mic and even on mic about how I almost didn't want to do this year because we just did it so much.
Me too, man. Me too.
I love it so much.
Well, and it's funny because like, obviously this is a very niche thing. I have friends of mine who are not music, and they're like, I watched your thing and it's kind of nice, but I don't know what you guys are talking about. I'm like, it's all right. It's not for you. We're not trying to be like Joe Rogan or something. Yeah. But it is fun to see friends, especially we're still, I think on some level, still coming out of the last couple of years of people being at home, and it's nice to see old friends, and periodically people will be like, I really like it. You guys got to keep doing it. It's really nice. And to see the Discord, which is Discord's like 1,500 or 1,600 people on there now. I'm like, that's a really amazing community. And it's just, it's nice to hear from people that they like these things. Cause we really did this as a coming out of, well, when the first lockdown happened, it was like, I just miss talking to my friends. I miss seeing you, and you and I were sort of starting our friendship in the previous year or so. And anyway, it's just a nice thing, and I'm glad that we're still doing it. And it's nice. It's nice when people say that it means something to them. It seems like it makes us want to do it more. So I appreciate you, and I appreciate other people as well.
I should announce
it
right back at you. Yeah, announce for one night only. For one night only. Next Tuesday night at 7 p.m. The Farewell Tour. The band's getting back together. Michael's in town, and I was contemplating like whether we should host an event or just do a live podcast again. And we're going to do our live podcast concept and do one episode and catch up with where everybody's at. Only return.
There's been a bunch of discussion about on the Discord because Rory's such an active member there. And so people were like, hey, Rory, what's going on with this? And he's like, well, maybe it's the cat's out of the bag, whatever. So you guys are getting back. And
yeah, I think we're all in very different places. And it sounds exciting to just, since Michael's in town, do an episode. We get a lot of similar things where people reach out like, I missed this. And they'll tag us in an episode and be like, oh, when you guys talked about this, like, this was great. I wish we had more of this happening. And it's like, we do it weekly or every other week, and we have an hour. But sometimes like we'll go an hour into one thought on the podcast, and certain people, it's very niche. Certain people like that. So we'll see what happens on Tuesday. But figured I would tell the people here. But if you're already in the Discord, obviously I'm the last to know we're doing it.
Discord, man. It's no. Yeah, you don't need more things in your life. There's a lot of Jon love in the Discord. So you guys are the Conversations podcast. You guys are going to go back for one kind of reunion show. Everybody's in town, and that's you guys are going to stream it next week live. Okay.
Live Tuesday at 7 p.m. Everyone can DM
DM
get
the
an invite
conversations
to the link, and we'll send the
page?
link out right
Okay,
before.
so if you guys, or you. Cool.
Yeah, or me.
Well, people should definitely check that out. So how's the last couple of weeks been? You've been, I don't know, mixing?
It's good. Yeah, mixing. Bunch of Atmos. Got this black album coming out. A couple of singles have come out,
which sound great.
So
and then the full album comes out this week.
Yeah, it comes out on Thursday. So we're actually going over to wrap it up today after this. The Atmos, because people wait to the last minute to approve Atmos's, even though, drops in a day. So that's been good. Been a little tired. It was my birthday the week before, and I just I drank a lot of wine nights and being out, and I'm just a little bodily exhausted. So recovering from that.
That's great, man.
Living life. Trying to live. That's a
good thing to do.
A little in and out of the studio. But, obviously the studio is.
Well, you and I were texting a little bit before, and you were like, why don't we just get into some questions? Because we spent 50 minutes on the Skrillex album 2 weeks ago. So we do have a bunch of good questions. Yeah. Of course, as we are wont to do, we'll probably spend like a half an hour on one of them. But maybe we could just bounce through a few of them. Let's see. There were a few follow-ups on the Skrillex conversation. I don't know if we really want to delve super back into that, because it was a great conversation, and we're both big fans of him as a sound designer, and the albums are great. Somebody was asking about using limiters on group buses to get the loudness as one of his techniques, and I think the answer is you do whatever. Do whatever sounds good.
Do whatever. I mean, I put limiters on my group as well, and I don't sound like Skrillex. But I put limiters on it on almost every group. I don't always have a limiter on a drum group, but I pretty much have it on everything, and not always on bass either. You don't really have to limit 808s.
One of the things. Go ahead.
If anything, I'll put like a clipper on an 808. Like maybe use the same that maximizer in Ozone sounds really good, and the soft clipper in there is good. So maybe I'll get a dB of limiting just based on a preset start. But I limit groups to get loudness for sure and density.
Yeah, so one of the things about the kind of the mixing end of things, and so much in the production aspect, there's a lot of mixing and engineering and sound design that goes in, as we've talked about how all the roles have blended over time. And if you have a laptop and a basic version of Logic, you can do every aspect of the process, or any DAW. You do every aspect of the process as you're making things. It's not like you write a song and then you go to a studio and do the arrangement and then you have someone mix it. Like, you're kind of doing everything at once. One of the things that I think we try to impart upon people is that all of these techniques that people use, whether it's Skrillex doing this, or Michael Brower doing this, or Jon doing this, or Serban doing this, like these people, especially on the mixing end, they can all work, and they can also all not work. I would say I'm working on. I'll see how much I can talk about. I'll say I'm working on 3 songs for an artist that is, I guess I would say multi-genre. I don't want to get too specific about it, but I'm working on 3 different songs that are basically 3 different pop genres, in the sense of like, there are hit songs with all 3 of these different sounds. So like, one of them is kind of an 80s thing, one of them is more of like a Latin reggaeton pop thing, and one of them is more in the Skrillex realm, although I'm working on finishing the productions for all of them, and so collaborating with different producers and the artist and trying to figure out where they all live. And they all 3, they're the same artist. They're going to likely be feature vocals. So the artist has an identity and they make things sound a certain way, but all 3 of these songs kind of have their own genre identity. And so I'm trying all these techniques, and they're all kind of different. One of them, which is the more kind of Latin one, cannot have the same amount of limiting that the one that's a little more like sound designy pop. And I'm using lots of kind of like the Skrillex bussing heavy limiter techniques. And then the other one is very 80s and open and has some of those like early 80s Prince sounds. And they all require different techniques. And now I'll bring my own thing to it. Because I just, I have my taste and I have my tendencies, but they're all different. They all require different approaches. And if I just tried to throw all the limiters on one of them, it's not going to sound right. But if the other one doesn't have all of that intense limiting and intense loudness stuff, it's not going to sound right either. So my overall thought with all of this stuff is just try all of it. Just try all of it. And, you know, those of you that aren't in the place where you're on crazy deadlines and you have to deliver something in 2 days and it has to be produced and done and mixed, if you're not doing that, take the time to experiment. Take lots of time. Try a whole process of
without a doubt
doing the mix where you're sub-bussing, doing lots of limiting, and then see how that adds up. And then do something where you don't do any of that and you just try to balance it all very individually, and then maybe it's mixed bus from that. I try all of it, because the thing that worked on the last song may not work on this song, and they're all viable techniques.
Yeah, I was just at a coffee hang with some engineers, and we were talking about how we geek out over gain staging, right? So like throughout the process, the gain staging is being changed just to see the benefits of a dB from a different way, right? Like, oh, if I turn down the subgroups all dB and hit the mix bus differently and then make up the gain later, like with this instead of this, like what benefits do I get? What you know, what opens up to see you know, another way into the mix just by lowering things a dB? Like, does it have to be so loud like the rough? But what are you losing when you take that down a dB into the existing mix bus or into your own mix bus that you think is a close starting point for all things? Like the genre thing is actually really, I love that you brought that up, because I mean, I could talk about it now, but we could talk about it even more after it comes out. But the Black Album has 3 to 4 different genres on the album, and the mix buses are different accordingly. Some of the songs either have no drums or minimal drums, and I actually really loved putting my Fern VT7 you know, tube compressor back on the mix bus. It hasn't been on in 2 or 3 years, and it just felt right. It was like, it just, the way it enhanced and pushed groove with these organic textures, like an acoustic guitar forward song, for example. That rounded off the edges so nice, and it bounced with the performance of the guitar, and that's cool. But that doesn't work on the more aggressive trappy, you know, hip hop records like that Talkback single that just came out. Like there's a compressor on that, because I was talking about compressing, but it's more of an SSL style thing. The SSL style thing is not on the song that I'm talking about, that the Fern thing is on, the tubes. Like, it just makes sense to try different things. And I think for a long time in our conversation in the past couple of years, I've been kind of seeing if I could make all songs kind of have a similar aesthetic to it via my own style of mix bus processing. And that was you know, it was an experiment for me, and it's not where I've landed. And I'm okay with that. I think a lot of things can work with tubes and with similar style of no compression. I think a lot of things can work, but also some things don't. And to not box yourself in where you think your template, and I'm guilty of this, I'm just not doing this now. Yeah. I've learned from my mistakes or trial and errors that I don't think anyone should box themselves in with a template as much as they have. And I think I would actually challenge people to not use a template at all. I have a very minimal template that I use based on how fast I need to sometimes mix. So they're good starting places, but a lot of it is bypassed now, and it's there or inactive. So I can have the thing if I want fast access to it. So I don't have to go search the plugins. I can just make it active, but they're not doing anything just yet. And I'm trying not to get gain as much from the mix bus first, like I used to do with my gain staging. And now I'm realizing that like every song and every, you know, you're talking about it right now. And this is really demonstrated on Six's album. Like it's very, I don't want to say it's all over the place, because there's a common thread with basically it's the same producers that did everything. They're just looking outside the box. There's an Afrobeat record. There's like a Tom Petty-ish, you know, record. That's probably my favorite. It's the last song on the record. It's fucking beautiful. It's a classic songwriting with, you know, acoustic guitar, and I'm stoked that ends the record. And but we can't get there without some hard-hitting shit, and the hard-hitting shit didn't work with the VT7. You know, it doesn't work with this gushy tube thing. So I mean, I think that the future of records seems to be, and for the last 5 to 10 years, has been these multi-genre album styles where the through line becomes the identity of the artist themselves. I mean, SZA's album is so all over the place, but it's her with the same vocal chain on most records, you know, recorded by the same person, Rob, and it sounds cohesive in a way. It doesn't in another way, meaning I think that maybe we shouldn't have had 6 mixers on it, maybe 2 or 3, depending on the genre attempts. But, you know, Dale Becker brought it all in sonically to a thing, but genre-wise, it's all over the place. That's not like an R&B specific album. And I think it's interesting that we have to do this for platforms like Spotify for playlisting, and Apple has these things for the Grammys. And I think that's fine. I do think we should have some guidelines of where things sit, just so, you know, normal consumers and fans of music can, you know, search for certain artists based on and have the radio station auto play algorithmically from this thing, like, you know, R&B dinner night or something. Like, I think that should, I would want to hear a SZA record on that and a Miguel record come on that and a Bruno Mars record. I would want those artists to be in circulation, but on each project, I don't think that's as necessary anymore, and I like that. I like to be more. Oh man, I really want to launch into a really long thing about the future of genres, but maybe we save that for another time. I feel like there's an interesting conversation to be had about how subcultures are kind of going away because of the internet, and obviously there's a lot of criticism out there about, like, you know, you just like my youth, one of the scenes was the grunge scene in Seattle, where it's like you get these artists incubating for multiple years before the whole country or the whole globe hears them. And there's some really interesting things that happen when you don't put a spotlight on something that has potential. Whereas today with the internet, things can go viral really quickly. And what that does for genre and subcultures and communities and things, maybe we save that for another time. But I think you're absolutely right that the idea of an artist being a genre is starting to those ties are starting to loosen. And I don't really know what that means for the culture. I mean, certainly an artist, you know, let's say an artist makes a 10-song album and there's an acoustic thing and there's a heavy club thing and there's an EDM thing and there's a rock, whatever. Those can all exist on mood playlists because people still, you know, I want to listen to some mellow music. I want to put on a mellow playlist, but defining artists that way is really interesting. And how, you know, I have my thoughts on the Grammys being kind of silly overall. But the idea of, like, you know, people like Tyler, the Creator, talk about what their genre is, or Kanye, or these people that have put out albums that were defying genres. I mean, you can go back to the Beatles, you can go to whatever, but like, that seems like a challenging thing. How do you define an artist as a genre versus defining a song? Song is pretty easy, but or easier, but like, artists are definitely expanding. I'm excited to hear the Black album, man. It's going to be an interesting thing. It's good. It's a true art project for him, which, you know, I can't talk too much about the interpersonal relationships of what, like, people think about this album before it comes out, but I think it's a true demonstration of Six, of like what he wants a record to be, and thankfully he's on a label that allows him to do that and not like have to reach for bangers all the time. Like, he has a point of view and a common thread lyrically, emotionally, in this project that I just fuck with as a fan, and I'm reaching for that in a lot of things, and I'm not finding it. So, you know, we talk about how rare as a mixer it is to even get to mix a whole project. And, you know, when you're mixing a few songs on an album and then you're invested in it, you can listen down as a fan after the fact, and you could you try to find, you know, a commonality in a point of view, and it seems really few and far between. And this one has it. So I'm stoked to just have a thread. Like, the sequence matters. You know, there's some records at the back end that I'm like, I think are bangers and they should be at the front. And in a label driven, hit looking for perspective for streaming, like, I think that would make sense. But for the art and what this record is, they do belong later. And that's something for me to wrap my head around, as like, well, we don't even listen to albums anymore. So is this going to work? But I think he's the type of artist where the fanship is so deep and waiting for something to drop from him that they will listen, and hopefully we'll hear the bangers in the record.
It's an exciting project. I can't wait to hear it. All right, let's just jump through a couple of questions quickly. Somebody asked about, is Ableton good for vocal production? I would say it's better than a tape recorder, but significantly worse than Logic or Pro Tools. I know there's other DAWs that people like, but speaking of sort of like the main three, when Ableton added lanes, I think all of us that love using Ableton, which I have now delivered a few mixes in Ableton. I love Ableton. Vocal production, it's just still not good. The manipulation of audio is not good. The nudge options are not good. The comping with its lanes, which is a version of playlists, I think it's called lanes, not that good. For some reason, Ableton doesn't seem to be able to handle lots and lots and lots of audio in the session at once in the way that Pro Tools can. I haven't done straightforward experiments on that, but every time I've done vocals in Ableton, which I've now probably, in the process of demoing things and writing songs, I've probably done dozens and dozens of songs where we just cut some vocals in Ableton rather than bounce stems, switch it over to Pro Tools, or try to sync them in some way, which I've tried a few times. It's just not very good. Pro Tools just crushes it. I know people like Logic. My impression is that Pro Tools is superior to Logic as well, but Logic is much better than Ableton. Talking specifically about cutting vocals, I'm sure you could go on the Discord and get more answers for that, but that's my quick answer for that. I don't know if you have a quick thought on that, but yeah.
I'm not going to touch that since it's not really my lane anymore. But I would use Pro Tools for sure.
Trying to do some like quick ones. I feel like we must have talked about this at some point, but it's gotten asked a couple times. What do you do for ear health? How do you think about ear health? That's a question. I mean, my main thing is put a pair of the highest dB reduction foam earplugs in every pocket of every pair of pants and every jacket, so you always have them with you, because you never know when you walk into some place and it's loud. You meet somebody for dinner and then drinks after and it's loud as shit. Like, that stuff takes a toll on your hearing. Wear earplugs. Have them around all the time. I even wear them on long car rides. I use these now for noise canceling when I'm on airplanes. The noise canceling on these, the AirPod Maxes are tremendous. Take care of your hearing, because everybody's hearing is going to deteriorate over time. That's just biology, but you can make that deterioration slower. In terms of healing, there's, again, a lot of good discussion on the Discord about various supplements and things like that. Meditation for tinnitus, things like that. Meditation can be very good. The other main thing is general health seems to be really important. So sleeping well, eating well, being physically active and healthy, like just general life health things, and lack of stress and all that are kind of the best things. That's my overall thought. What do you think about that?
I would just add, don't use Q-tips in your ears. Let the wax fall naturally is a really important aspect. You can clean it on the outside when it's visible, but the inside, and also going to get a test to see if you have wax buildup. I went to Nazeri last year just to double check this, and I have a very good like wax disposal, so I don't have to worry about clogged ears. I thought I did. Like Dale Becker was talking about, he has to like go I think a couple times a year he does to clean out. Like some people just have natural wax disposal, and I thankfully have that. But the bad part about that is it gets on your AirPods and you gotta like clean it. And I have like a lot of TMI, but I have a lot of fucking earwax. But that's good for a mixer to have clear ears all the time. And I just take care of it by cleaning my stuff. Because if it gets too much wax buildup and bacteria gets on there and you're putting it back in, like you can be prone to ear infections. Thankfully, I'm not prone to ear infections. But these things all matter. The cleaning aspect of it is just, I think it's a little counterintuitive because people think that they're supposed to go in deep and clean, and you could do more damage by cleaning and messing with the hair follicles in there that are kind of natural compressors and limiters that are in there, actually like protecting the ears. But earplugs.
That's why the reason why I talk about the foam,
there's actually like
it's the same thing where your ears naturally produce wax. That's a good thing. It's part of your body's cleaning system. You don't have to stick a bunch of Q-tips in there. But if you're constantly putting foam earplugs in there, the reason to get the foam ones is you dispose of them and put fresh ones in there, so you're not putting dirty stuff in your ear over and over. If you have custom earplugs, you gotta clean them.
I have the custom ones, but you have to clean them. Yeah. So like for example, tomorrow night I'm going to see SZA. and it's going to be loud as fuck. So I can't forget my earplugs. Like I'm not laissez-faire about bringing earplugs to shows. I won't go in the show if I forget my earplugs. I know that's
go to CVS,
but this is my livelihood.
CVS,
you know, and
drugstore, they all have earplugs. Just go, if you forget your earplugs, go.
All have earplugs
because you sit there for 4 hours in a show, banging bass and it's bad for your ears.
Bad. But there's also there's a website, I forgot the name to link to it, but basically there's like a SPL level. This is super geeky. SPL level of popular restaurants in Los Angeles. So like the loudest restaurant is one of my favorite restaurants, Bavel, in my neighborhood, and it's like it sits over 100 SPL, like just resting. It's so loud. So I love there. I think I'm gonna go on Thursday with my friends visiting from New York, and I want to take him there. I have to remember to bring earplugs. And sometimes I forget, and it's really fucking loud. And it's louder than me mixing, and it's more consistent, right? Because when you're mixing, you're turning up, you're turning down, you have breaks. Like I mix loud because I have fun mixing loud, but I don't mix loud for an entire song length. I mix loud for sections, and I turn it down, or maybe one listen through, and that's 2.5 to 3.5 minutes. That's not going to kill you if you do that periodically. But a 2-hour-long dinner, 3-hour-long dinner with 90 to 100, consistently, that's going to hurt your ears. So I'm glad this came up. This is really important. And it's really, I love like listening to the Hooperman podcast where they give a variation of like cost effective treatments for things. Like this is low cost interventions of getting, cheap earplugs to protect your ears. You don't have to go spend hundreds of dollars on custom molds. I think if you were to, at some point in your career, when this isn't, money isn't as much of an issue, they're more comfortable and they don't look weird because they're not sticking out of your ear. People don't even notice. So if you're especially at a dinner, you're not like, I wouldn't be embarrassed wearing them anyway. But if you were to be embarrassed, you don't have to be when they're molded to the color of your ear. And nobody can tell, so no one thinks you're a fucking weirdo for wearing earplugs at a dinner.
I agree with this. If you feel weird about protecting your ears, you shouldn't be a fucking audio professional. Wear earplugs, look weird, be like, this is my livelihood. If my ears go away, I can't make money, or I can't love the thing that I do, or whatever. Fuck all those people that make, if you feel weird, like I wear earplugs in the strangest places. People are like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm a music producer. And they go, okay. Like, it's just what it is. Like, and that's why I say,
it makes sense.
I've had custom earplugs a few times, and honestly, I always forget them somewhere, and it's another thing to put in your bag. And so that's why I just switched over to, you can like $10 on Amazon. You can get something like 100 foam earplugs that'll knock down 30 dB. Just put that shit everywhere. It's like, they're in my pockets. They're in the fifth pocket in the Levi's jeans, whatever pants versions of that. Just do all that. The other thing I was thinking about as you were saying that is, and I realized this recently, I can't imagine I'm alone in this, where I often just have audio going at all times, where it's just like, I'll have a podcast on, I'll be watching something on my laptop as I'm making dinner. I'm now, in addition to daily meditation, trying to make more time where I don't have audio just going. I think that's an underrated part of ear fatigue. It's nice to take a break when you're working on something and then listen to something else. It's also really important to get space for your ears where there's silence. I think we are all living lives where it's very easy to fill the silence, and that's like a metaphor as well as a literal thing. It's important to take time for your ears to take a break, for your brain to take a break, for your brain to be able to just like exist rather than have, I like playing music, I like listening to podcasts, but taking a break from that I think is really good, not just for mental health, but for ear health as well. Just the constant chatter of constant things happening, even if it's not above, say, the 80-something decibel threshold that if you do for multiple hours, then even without all the measurements, just taking a break for your ears, I think is a really underrated thing. And I think people, including myself, are filling a lot of silence with just ambient, again, podcasts, music, whatever, and taking some space away from that, I think is very good for ear health as well.
This is very, very, very key point. I mean, there's so much that we can digest, at a given, there's only so much we can digest at a given time. And I'd imagine that if you're just maximizing input, you're not actually retaining as much as you would if you. So actually I'm like on a no, not a no, but a very low podcaster my thing between music, and I'm on a 0. And I used to go for walks with AirPods in. Also, I'm realizing that I don't want to have these things in my ears as much as I've had. So this year, actually, this is the thing I care about a lot, right? Especially this year, is not just like, I have a bunch of podcasts I could listen to, and just not. I'm pretty religious about the Monday Huberman drops. And that's about the ones that I look forward to most. I used to be obsessed with listening to Lex Friedman. And right now I'm like really discerning on which I'm listening to, what topics matter to me, versus just like, wow, I'm going to learn about a bunch of things this week because he's talking to a bunch of different kinds of people. And I'd rather the silence or the street noise. Like, I live in downtown Los Angeles. There's some weird shit going on down there. And it's kind of interesting to just hear what's going on. It's kind of nice to hear the wind. It's kind of nice to hear the rain fall on the umbrella, right? There's a lot of things that nature offers us in a city. That's funny. But the constant, 80, and whatever the number is irrelevant to just, it's chatter. It's chatter. And yes, you can tune in and tune out. You can still have a podcast on and think about, your own life.
Not really.
And be introspective, but not really. Not really.
I'm not sure how this is going to come out, but it's a thought that I have. It's one of those thoughts that I don't want to allow myself to have, but I have it sometimes, and I'm having it more, which is I'm suspicious that perhaps my intense desire to, like, I think that by listening to these Smarty Pants podcasts, that it is benefiting my life in really significant ways. And my suspicion is that it's much closer to like doom scrolling TikTok than I want to admit. Like, I think there is a thing about it where there is interesting information that I get a lot of the time, but a lot of it is repetition, and there's not that much that's super actionable. And I'm really just filling the space more than I'm actually learning things. One of the things that I've heard a few people say, this is not an original thought of mine, but when I read, which by the way, I don't read nearly as much as I used to because there's so much audio and I feel like I'm retaining things. But when I read, I now read slower. I read things that I think are really great, and I read much, much slower, where I read and then I think and I let it marinate. And podcasts do not allow you to do that. People talk about listening to podcasts at 1.5 speed. It's like that. I don't think that means you're getting more information. I think I think that means more information is coming at you quickly, but that's not how you retain information and do actionable things in your life. And I love Huberman, and I love a lot of the Lex conversations. But I also feel like that's me filling space with smart people saying smart things. Still do some of that stuff, still read, still do that shit. Honestly, people listening to this stuff, I hope that it's useful to you, but also you're listening to two guys just talk. Like, I don't know. So, I guess what I'm saying is stop watching this shit. That. But it's, I don't know. I'm suspicious of the, like, I've spent 15 hours listening to podcasts. What did I actually get out of it? Would my life be better talking to a few people who are the smart people for 15 or 20 minutes, and then taking walks and thinking and letting my brain absorb things? I don't know. It's something I'm thinking about. I'm going to forget this tidbit in 10 minutes. That's what I'm saying.
I know, it's amazing. It's amazing. Yeah. I think I completely agree. That's exactly what I'm feeling this year. I do think, like, for example, I would imagine on some people that have some health concerns, in combination with their doctor, listening to, deep studies and analysis of certain things, like mild, health concerns, catching things early on. Like, there's probably some really good information on these podcasts we're talking about that you can help learn, so you can be more educated when you're talking to your doctor about things. And maybe if you're concerned about financial crisis stuff, it might be better, instead of talking to your fucking friend who doesn't know shit, who just wants to talk over, a drink, it might be nice to learn a few things about the comparisons to other times in life when things have been where they're at. Like, I'm sure there are. It might be. I'm saying that's why, like, I'm like, oh, maybe I should learn more about this. And then I realize what you're saying is basically, I just want to sit with my own thoughts for a minute and maybe, like, come up with more. I mean, I'm very good at this when it comes to audio. I don't listen to much audio conversations at all because I want to come up with my own successes and failures in my practice. And that will help, me at least feel like I have some sort of purpose in this life and in this industry, which is just hard to remind myself of. So I thank the people like you just did for watching this. I wouldn't fault you for stopping watching these buffoons.
This is part of the reason where like
sound and life.
We don't have sponsors. We're never going to charge for any of this. This is here. If it's useful to people, great. It's honestly something that you and I wanted to do, and so we're going to do it because if and when we want to do it. That's great. And that's part of the reason I don't want to monetize this stuff, because I don't want to feel like I'm trying to get people to listen to this thing. It's like, if you guys like it, that's cool. We'll talk shit. We'll talk about compressors and how hard it is to do this sometimes. But like, go ahead. Yeah.
I noticed.
I was going to give
you continue.
Thought before another thing, but go.
I just think that I've noticed I drive with no sound. That's kind of my first way into. I used to just, because podcasts are so long, right? Like I love Dr. Peter Attia, who's on the newest Huberman episode, and it's 3 hours long. Like, but I'm going to listen to that one because I care about both of their perspectives, and I want to see where they cross and where they differ, because I know they're going to have like some proper discourse on concepts that we're all trying to figure out in health and longevity, right? Like, this is an interesting one to me, so I'm going to listen to that one. And it's 3.5 hours. So that's very hard to find 3.5 hours. It's not one day of listening. It's going to be multiple days, and it's going to be in the car. But if I have a gut feeling that says I need just peace of mind, I'm going to just turn it off. And I used to think I have to know, because maybe that would offer something to discuss later with my girlfriend, with my friend. If I'm having dinner, it's like there's these like crossover points of conversation starters. Oh, I found this new thing interesting. Do you know anything about it? Do you want to talk about it? Do you want to learn about it? Versus, why don't we just show up? And, it's probably going to be pretty fruitful either way, just because we haven't seen each other in a week or 2 or 3 or a year, and not have to have something to say. But a lot of times I would get a little bit more nervous about going to a social event.
This is exactly what I'm talking about. It's like going to dinner with your friends, and I've been guilty of this. I'm not, going to dinner with your friends and talking about a podcast you listen to is pretty close to being like, let me show you this meme. It's not that far away. Versus like, here's what's going on in my life. Here's what I'm feeling. Here's what I'm feeling about the world. Here's what I did. Here's what's in my heart. It's like, did you hear what so-and-so said on a podcast? Is kind of just being like, look at this funny thing that I just saw. It's like, there's a place for all these things. It's great, but I don't know that I needed 3 hours of Andrew Huberman to tell me to drink less alcohol. I think I knew that it wasn't good for me, but maybe it's good for some people. We knew that. Maybe it's very already. I'm glad he's in the world, and I like him a lot. Anyway, moving on from this. I know we've talked about this too. I love this topic. I don't know how deep we want to go in it, but a bunch of people were asking about. There's a lot of ways to talk about this topic, but bad mixes or mixes that are non-traditional that are really good and effective, like the idea of what is a good mix and how one should mix and how things are supposed to sound. I think fundamentally you and I agree that there's no rules on any of this shit. You just do what's effective. But there's some conversations about brightness of mixes not going away, but the brightness of pop music, especially with like the Miley stuff and a lot of stuff that Tyler and Kid Harpoon are doing. And
that's not a mixed choice. That's a totally. Production
but they didn't
choice.
The mixer didn't then go like hype it up like crazy. Like, these are choices in the process.
He might have, and they might have happened to dial it back. I don't know.
I know you have, whatever it is.
You know what I mean?
But the idea of like bad mixes that work, that was referenced again on the Discord recently. We have a little section that's like favorite music. There's a little channel, and so people just post shit that they like. I haven't listened to this song in forever, and one of them was the Desiree "You Gotta Be," which I know I talked about on this podcast. Where I think actually somebody did a loudness analysis. The verse was like, oh shit, I should really look at it. I think the loudness on the verse was minus 26 LUFS, and then the chorus was minus 13. Like just to go, and it goes, dun, 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 you gotta be, but like they literally bump it up like 10 dB of LUFS,
dude. Yeah, and like 18 layers of vocals come in, like it's a smash hit song that I love, and like how do you? I don't smash.
Yeah,
it sounds
and it's also
so good.
And I think about other mixes that we
everywhere.
Listen to. Again, I think we've talked about this, but whatever. We repeat some things. Like the Mr. Brightside mix sounds very strange and small and weird, but it's amazing. The Hey Ya mix is strange. It's amazing. The whole song is strange, but it's one of the greatest things of that era. I don't know. I don't know if there's more to talk about on this, but
I think the best mix, I mean, I don't know how to, like, I don't even know what a traditional mix means. Like, I guess like maybe Bob Clearmountain is a traditional mix engineer, like masterfully balanced and things sound. Those, they're like, I don't like the word. I'm just trying to figure out, like, since it was mentioned, what does that even sound like? Continuum, maybe John Mayer's album, like Manny was a traditional approach to like arrangement where the drums sit and where the vocal sits, and it's not hyped and it's warm and it's fuzzy and it's musical. You know, there's probably like you don't want your mix to sound like a broken speaker.
By the way,
unless you're putting on music that's supposed to sound like a broken speaker.
XXX Tentacion, the Look at Me, which the mix bus is just crushed. It's part of what makes it exciting. You know, it's the distorted.
I literally was just with dude who made that yesterday, and he was just like, I don't even know what I'm doing, but he likes what I'm doing. So
of like contemporary mixing, you just like, and it makes it sound exciting. And you can do it too much, and it sounds bad. And sometimes it's right for some songs. I don't know. I think the answer to all this is there's no rules, bro.
Yeah,
just make.
No, but I mean that's a simplistic answer. I would want to say something about how I think the best mix is whatever offers the song its best chance at success. And so if that's
very subjective too, it's impossible to know
if it's all subjective, but you might be able to hear what, you know, when there's a perspective shift, when you have a producer that says, okay, I've taken it as far as I can go, now we need a mixer. Like the ongoing conversation is, why do we even mix anyway? So you mix because you trust that someone else's taste will basically just tell you it's done with a few or many moves, depending on what it takes. And you can have a conversation with the artist, what they're looking for, the producer, what they're looking for, to have any reference points. Like if someone is bringing you something that is like, sounds like it's filtered to 5K because like they don't know any better, but they want it to sound like a Serbian, you know, mix on Silk Sonic, like maybe we can talk about unveiling some of the missing frequencies. And like, I'm sure there are ways, but that all comes with conversation and taste and understing where something should translate.
Yeah. What's the
or how something should translate elsewhere in the world.
Yeah.
So to call a mix good or bad, I think maybe for me, I experienced this because I have a lot of producer friends that I'll hear rough mixes, and then either maybe I'm mixing it, or maybe Serban's mixing it, or Spike, or Manny, or Tizio, or any of the homies. I might have heard the rough mix before, so I have a vantage point of, did the mix make it better or worse? And I think that, to me, determines if it's a good mix, because the source material has been elevated to be more compelling or less compelling. And just because they got it mixed by someone that maybe costs a lot of money and has a big name, but the rough mix was better, I'm not going to say that that's a good mix. I'm going to say that's a bad mix. But it doesn't mean that the bad mix doesn't affect its success at #1 for 14 fucking weeks. I'm just saying that that's not as good of a mix as it could be, because I've heard a better one, which was the rough.
Speaking of podcasts, I've really enjoyed which is, I think is sort of now over, but the Rick Rubin promotional tour for his book. That's something that I like listening to over and over in the background, because it puts me in the mode of wanting to make records. Maybe that's a good reason to listen to things. But I heard him say something that I always, when people ask about, when I worked on a bunch of the Psycho Records X Factor stuff and made a bunch of records for Simon Cowell, they asked how he was as an executive, and I said one of my favorite things about him is that he specifically told people to not tell him who wrote a song or produced it or whatever. He just wanted to listen to it. And Rick Rubin said something similar about mixers specifically, but I'm guessing it applies to everything, which is, don't tell me who did what. Just play the things for me and I'll pick the best thing, because it might be the assistant at the studio did a mix and super A-list person did a mix. And I don't want to have my opinion influenced by the names. I just thought it was an interesting thing that both Rick Rubin and Simon Cowell.
I think a lot of people could use that advice and we're a little bit more. The blind.
I'm not, and I don't know if I've ever met anybody who's this way. And clearly, both Simon and Rick Rubin are know that they're not this way. It's hard to decouple what you think, the expectation. If you have like so-and-so wrote this song, or so-and-so mixed this, or so-and-so produced this, and then you listen, it's really, I find it impossible to completely remove the information of I like this person's work in the past, or I don't like this person's work in the past. To like pull that out is pretty much impossible. So I like hearing things without getting any context for stuff first. I thought I just had. Let's see.
Love it.
Had about 10, 12, 15 minutes.
Couldn't agree more, my friend.
Let's see. There's one other that I really liked.
Getting love in the thread for this final step mix from Teo. I love that mix. I love that record. Wave IQ, who was on the thread just now, he produced it.
Who's the artist?
A friend of mine, and Teo, Teo. He's so tight, and I just love this record, and I love that someone just said that they like it because it just dropped, and I'm stoked on how it sounds. Kind of the first mix I did with the newer mix bus that I was talking about, with less tubes on it, and just kind of having a more solid state wall for the drums to hit, and that shit goes hard.
I'll have to check it out. There were a few people that asked, I'm kind of combining some questions here, but people were asking about consistency. Somebody said being successful is being consistent, and how many songs do you mix a year? How do you stay consistent? And then somebody also asked, how do you overcome not having motivation to mix and produce? I think those things are pretty well tied. I was on FaceTime with a friend of mine recently who's a visual artist, and we were just chatting, and then I had to do something on my computer, and I was talking to her, and I just heard a little like in the background, and I was like, oh, what are you doing? She's like, I'm just drawing. She's a visual artist. That's just what she does all the time. She's always making stuff. Like, there's a little break in our conversation. I had to do something real quick. We stayed on FaceTime. She just started drawing. Those are the kind of people, whether you're a mixer, you're a visual artist, you're a producer, whatever you do, if you're a person that is just doing some version of it all the time, I think thinking about it, listening to it, talking about it, whatever, those are the people that stay the most consistent. I find that in terms of motivation, that's one of the ways that I stay motivated, because it's hard if you're on a challenging project, or you can't crack a production, or you've been mixing the same artist and it's tiring, or you're not doing exactly what you want to do. It's hard to, if that's the only thing that you're doing, to continue to return to that. I find that doing things around that just joyously is a really important part of the process. I start my day with a few different things. I do a journaling thing. I meditate. I also play piano. And I play a song I like. And even if the day is going to be full of frustrating notes and trying to solve problems and phone calls and emails and whatever, I've started the day by doing a version of this thing that I do professionally just for the joy of it. And that gets me excited to make things for the rest of the day. Even if what I'm doing is tweaking mixes and just EQ, the idea of like, I play piano, I play a song I like, I do some scales, I sing a little bit. That's how I start the day. That's one of those things that keeps me motivated throughout the day. Everybody's got different versions of it, but I think finding ways to, when I'm not motivated, it's because there aren't like things right in my focus that I'm really excited about. But it's really, turns out, I think it's very easy to find other little things that are unrelated to that to be excited about. So make sure you're doing those things. That's my thought. Do you ever get non-motivated? How do you deal with things?
No, it's a great answer. I was about to say, like, thankfully for me, like, there's nothing I like much more than mixing records. So it's hard to be unmotivated to mix, even if I don't love the song. Like what we've talked about a lot, I kind of find ways to, I'll find something about the record I like. If I'm sick, I'm not motivated to mix usually. It's the only time. If there's like a health issue, I'm not motivated to mix. But I'm always wishing I was motivated to mix when I'm in those circumstances. But I really like resting when I'm not feeling well. I know that the sooner you start resting, the podcast lessons, perks of the podcast. We know that if we are feeling sick and
from
we rest,
listening
we get
to
better.
47 hours of Huberman, Atia, and others, I learned when I'm tired,
that's what I've learned.
Go get rest. Well, one thing I was going to say about you too is that you are in this place where you found the thing that you can consistently love and do, but you were running a recording studio business, you were producing, you were writing, you were doing lots of different things. And through the process of doing that stuff, you even though you like producing and like doing this stuff, the joy in that and the consistent joy was not nearly as much as mixing. And that's one of the reasons, as we've talked about many times, that's one of the reasons you really settled into being a mixer over the last 5 years or so. And that's an important aspect of this too, which is if you find over the course of years that you can't find the motivation to do something, unless they're already paying you a lot of, it's one thing to not be motivated at your job, at your bank job or whatever it is that you're doing. But if you're trying really hard to be a successful record producer and you're not finding the motivation to produce, that might tell you something. That it's doesn't, this lifestyle is not for everybody. And it doesn't mean you then can't go make great music. But the idea of like, if you have to find motivation to do it all the time, there might be better uses of your time some of the time. It may not be for you to work 12 to 14 hours a day when you're young or when you're coming up, because that's, as we talked about, that's really what it takes. Like, I didn't need anybody to tell me to go make records. I did it for like 10 years for no money all the time because I wanted to do it all the time. And whether that's healthy or not, or useful to other people or not, or a good lifestyle or not, that's how I was. So now when I'm like trying to be more of an adult and find balance in my life, I have to make more strategic decisions about when I spend my time, how I spend my time, staying excited about things. But there was a decade where I didn't even have interpersonal relationships. I just worked all the time. And that is really, really, as we've talked about, not something I recommend to the average person. So finding motivation is an interesting topic. There's strategies to keep you on the right track, but in terms of a larger fundamental motivation, there's nothing wrong. There's lots of beautiful ways to live your life that include making music only when it's fun for you. That sounds actually amazing. I would like to only do that forever. Yeah, that's a beautiful
hobbyist thing. And I still would say though on that note, because I think that point a lot of us share, which is the lack of interpersonal relatious for many years to decades. I wouldn't do it differently.
Also, there's no choice.
Having known better at this point, this like the head down, figure out as much as you can in the time where that's the best time to do it fundamentally for the brain too. When you're absorbing all these techniques that we'll never forget. Like, I don't even think twice about, we talk about the thing we started with first about these limiters and the Skrillex and the mix and the grouping. It's like, well, whatever gets you to the result you want, the fastest, the most consistent, that's the tool and technique you use. And we're supposed to have a bunch of those in the bag. And that's where you practice the majority of those techniques is that time. And as music changes and you pick up a few new tricks here and there and your friends recommend things. Like today I got asked about a plugin I was talking about from one of my good homies. And I'm just like, oh yeah, check this out. Try it like this too. You share things, but the taste and the maximum effort is put in that period of time, in that growth when nothing else really does matter, because as you get older, people have families and relationships start to matter more and more and more. And maybe people have had a cheat code and they were able to make all of this work. I and a lot of people among me were unable to make all of it work. I definitely think that the sacrifice is necessary, and I just don't want people to think that like if you take away something from this episode, it's you have to maintain all of those interpersonal relationships and sacrifice the drive that you might have within to maximize that period of your life. If we're talking to like teenagers, and I don't think there's anything wrong with losing some people in your life.
You're going to grow and change, and I think I guess maybe the main takeaway is there's some strategies for getting more motivated, and get more focused and refining and being more efficient. But if you're not finding the joy in the process of making things all the time, and you're starting out, I don't know that I'd recommend trying to do it all the time for some, like, if you're not enjoying the process when nobody's there to motivate you, you're not all of a sudden going to find great joy in it in your life. And it's not a fun industry to try to hustle. And there's way easier ways to make money.
I think I'm so lucky to have such deep self-motivation for mixing records. It's so niche. It's so ridiculous. Like, that's what I think about day and night. if I don't have something I love to mix, it's like, how am I going to get that thing that I love to mix? Or how am I going to, you know, like, who am I going to go hang out with that I know is up to something tight and like hang out with and fucking work with? Like, what's the, whatever that thing is, that character, I'm lucky to have it, and you're lucky to have it. And you surround yourself with people that you, like to learn from, collaborate with, and fuel your motivation. Same with me. And I would recommend that to all humans. And if, like you're saying, I think that's a key point. If you're finding it hard to self-motivate, no one's going to really do it for you. I think maybe I'm sure there's the chance where you play something for someone that you think isn't good, and then they tell you why it's good.
People are important.
It's like, I think those people are important. There's going to be not as many of those people as you think you'll find throughout your time, but you will find one single handful of those people that are really honest and trustworthy about, response to your records. You know, I don't really care what everyone thinks about my mixes, but there's a few people that, like, when they say it's tight, I'm like, that gives me the validation that I'm looking for. You know, it's nice that my mom might like a song that comes out that I don't think sounds good, but when someone's like, no, this shit bangs, I'm like, oh, okay, cool. You know what bangs. Like, I know you know what bangs.
For sure.
That's cool.
But they will obviously, they will not sustain
need that.
It needs to come from a different thing. And as I've said before, I think I can't remember what the actual dates in it, but I basically started recording and being obsessed with music when I was like 12 or 13. And I didn't really make enough money to be like, cool, I think I can have a career until I was like 29-ish. So a good like 17 years of self-motivating. That's why I don't recommend it to people. I have lots of ideas about how to keep it going. But the thing that makes you want to do something for 15 years for no money, with people being like, what are you doing with your life? That's like, some people are like, that's cool, you make music. But like, I ran into friends when I was 28 and they're like, and from Oakland, they're like, you still doing that? I'm like, yeah, I don't know. I don't think I'm going to do anything else at this point.
Yeah. I love that. That's amazing. There's also back to an earlier part of the conversation with digesting audio and always having a podcast on, or music or TV show or anything, audiobook. Like, there's so much stuff you can do. Like, you can spend your days doing things all day. And there's many more decades of life where we couldn't do that, or people couldn't do that, and they only did one thing, or they did two things. They ate and then did the other thing. Now we have a lot more competition for our attention, and it's going to be harder for people to, buckle down and really feel that this is the thing that they want to do most. But there are so many. I just had a meeting with an amazing 18-year-old artist that I'm so stoked about. Came over and played me his EP that we're going to mix, hopefully starting next week. I'm like so turned on by it. And this dude, I can tell, all he does is fucking make music. And he's in good hands with a good team. He alluded to playing some video games. I'm sure he plays video games too. But this dude is in music. He's living it. He's breathing it. He's eating it. He's sleeping it. All of those things. And I know that those people exist, but I imagine it's harder at this point to maintain that focus on the one thing that you think you're supposed to do. So maybe constantly remind yourself to
a nice
go
final
deeper into that thing.
It's good to see you, my friend. I'm glad we're back on today. It was a crazy week last week. I'm glad we're back on and doing this. Love you, my brother.
Me too. Till next week, maybe.